요즘에 챗GPT나 제미나이를 통해서 심리 상담을 받는 경우도 많아요.
I'm not going to tell AI if the option is enabled for that chat model to use that chat for improvement reasons. That information could come up in a different person's chat as a fact coming up from somewhere.
한국은 사실 세계적으로 유명한 IT 강국이잖아요. 근데 왜 이렇게 정보가 자주 털리는 걸까요?
I think there's a slight misunderstanding. We often believe that passwords need to be uppercase, lowercase, special digits, characters, and so on. But that the most important aspect is the of password. That would be almost impossible for AI automated algorithm to guess.
네, 안녕하세요. 각 업계의 진짜 쓸모있는 이야기를 전해드리는 대외비의 신하영입니다. 자, 오늘 정말 특별한 분이 저와 함께 해주시는데요. 먼저 자기소개 부탁드립니다.
Thank you for having me. I'm Gerald Casullis. I'm a VP at NordSecurity.
오늘은 나도 모르게 인터넷에 퍼져나가는 내 개인정보 대체 어디까지 퍼지는지 그리고 왜 퍼지는지에 대해서 우리 인사이더 분과 함께 심층적으로 이야기를 나눠보도록 하겠습니다. 자, 먼저 노드 VPN이라는 회사를 말씀을 해주셨는데 노드 VPN에서 보안에 대해서 연구한 흥미로운 연구 탑3가 있다면서요?
Absolutely. So probably the first one, I'll start. We do annual report of top 200 most common passwords in the world. And maybe interesting fact, the most common password last year in South Korea is 7 ones. 1111111.
아, 그러니까 1이 7개. 아, 너무 쉬운데요.
Closely followed by the word admin.
admin.
Second, probably interesting research we conducted, it is around cookie leakage. So not cookies that we eat, but cookies that are being collected by web browsers. We conducted a global research and we saw billions and billions of cookies. So think of data points in your web browser, how you search, what you store in your browser in terms of could be your name, your email address, and that gets often leaked.
왜 이게 유출이 되는 거예요?
It is very valuable as data. And in this research, we saw that Korea ranks 34th in the world out of 255 countries analyzed. So it is one of the more top-end countries. And Korea has over 577 million cookies leaked from last year, which 64 million out of those are still active. And by active, what I mean, if I take that cookie session and I apply it to my browser, that bypasses all the security measures. So if you log into a website and you log in with your password and your cookie would save that means the next time you go into that website, you don't need to put your password in. And if I take that active session, I will bypass your password need.
Okay, so what's the third research then?
Third research, we did interesting research. We looked into cultural nuances and cultural habits. And that in Korea, what's popular is called shoulder surfing.
Shoulder surfing?
What it is when someone is speaking over your shoulder and looking into your device. So maybe you're getting a text message or you emailing, whatever you're doing. And 21% of Koreans said they have been either victims of that or saw people shoulder surfing. So 1 in 5 Koreans have seen it, witnessed it, or maybe even done it themselves.
Wow, no room for privacy.
Absolutely not, unfortunately.
Wow. Those are very interesting. Cookie leakage, I think that's the most disturbing. 좀 얘기를 들으니까 좀 무서워지는데요. 자, 요즘 외국에서 난리라는 AI를 이용한 해킹 사례가 있다고 하는데 이 얘기도 한번 들어보도록 하겠습니다.
Perhaps one thing to understand for people as well that the way that AI is being used for hacking now, it's not that it acts as an autonomous actor and does the hacking on human behalf. It is mainly a tool that being utilized by hackers to maximize the effect and make it easier for them to actually commit illegal activities. We see that actually being on the rise where AI now is so powerful that you can actually get deepfake attack or targeted attack where you get a phone call where it would seemingly be me talking to you, but it would be a hacker deepfaking my voice, my face in order to target you, or let's say using your voice to target your family member. So we see those type of utilizations of AI tools targeting people with attacks.
AI가 주체가 아니라는 거는 좀 마음이 놓이는데 그래도 이 수법이 굉장히 고도화됐다는 거는 좀 무섭습니다. 자, 이러니까 보안, 그러니까 내 정보를 지키는 게 정말 중요하다라고 느끼는데 보안 전문가로서 AI에게 절대 절대 말하면 안 되는 정보 5가지만 뽑아주신다면 뭐가 있을까요?
That is a very good question. First, my number one will always be passwords. I know it sounds intuitive, but we often enough we hear people actually putting passwords into their chats. Yeah, sometimes even to store password, because then you can ask the prompt to remind you what the password is. So that's the first one.
That's a
no go.
no-no.
Number 2 would be your credit card details, payment details, credit card details. Again, intuitive perhaps to you and me, but then often enough for simplicity reasons, people do that. Number 3, I'd say passport information. Number 4 would be your work information. So sensitive work information. And again, probably that's the most frequent one that we see where people, for simplicity, right, they put in the work information in there. So it could be contracts, could be, think of customer details, right? And then number 5, any sensitive personal information. Could be medical records, could be your address, could be your full name, things like that. So if you're happy for everyone you know to know that information, do it. But if you don't, then think twice and don't put that information into your chatbot.
그 방금 말씀해주신 거는 사실 조금만 생각하면 꽤 직관적이게 하지 않아야 될 행동들인 것 같거든요. 그런데 보안 디렉터 입장으로서 본인이 봤을 때 개인적으로 절대 하면 안 되는 게 있나요?
So for me, I like to make sure that not every bit of information is known about me. Even when I'm chatting to AI and maybe I'm asking for advice around training, around running, I'm not going to tell AI where I am. I'm not going to tell AI about specific information that could pinpoint my exact location. And I'm not saying that public would find out by you putting that information into the chatbot. But I think ultimately, for my peace of mind, I want to make sure that not everything is actually out there.
근데 그런 건 어떤가요? 요즘에 이제 챗GPT나 제미나이를 통해서 심리 상담을 받는 경우도 많아요. 그러니까 정보는 아니지만 나의 상태에 대해서 굉장히 상세하게 이야기를 해주는 경우도 있거든요. 이거는 얼마나 위험한 일인지 좀 들어보고 싶습니다.
I'll be honest, I do some of that myself.
You do?
Not to very deep extents. One thing I'd say, it is fine to use chatbots for even for conversations sometimes, because I think nowadays we live in the era where, many people feel very lonely, and I don't see nothing bad in that. But what I would say also is double check settings in your AI chatbot that you use. Could be ChatGPT, could be any other tool. And often enough, there's a setting in there that would allow you to turn off the analytical side of things, meaning that the model that you're using will not be able to use your chat in order to improve that model. If it's enabled, the option is enabled for that chat model to use that chat for improvement reasons, that information could come up in a different person's chat as a fact coming up from somewhere. So I think having that feature turn off is one of the key aspects of it. And then also, if you're chatting with your chatbot around personal information, how you're feeling and whatnot, you can use pseudonyms. So you don't need to use your own name. You can say, oh, my friend is feeling that way. What would you advise? So sometimes at least there's going to be that a little bit of layer of privacy protection itself. Or you can start personal sort of secure chat as well.
그거 말고도 또 보안을 위해서 핸드폰에서 조심해야 되는 설정들이 있으면 좀 말씀 부탁드리도록 하겠습니다.
That's a really good question where I feel like not many people focus on that nowadays, as we live such a digital lives, and obviously our phones are best friends.
Are part of us.
Absolutely. Like, look, I'm sitting here doing an interview with you and I have my phone in my pocket. Exactly. There are a couple of things. So firstly, number one advice I always say, make sure you constantly update apps. Updating applications is essential because ultimately that removes certain bugs, that removes certain entry levels that could arise into those applications. So add security. Then one of the biggest ones afterwards, I'd say, it's going to settings and double checking what permissions you grant to the applications. We conducted research before as well, and we saw as well sometimes applications that don't necessarily need to have access, let's say, to your microphone or pictures, your camera, they have access to those. Meaning that if they wanted to, they can have access to your contact list, let's say, if that's enabled.
And all my photos?
And your photos. And if you have a certain app that shouldn't have access to microphone because there isn't a way recording anything, whatnot, turn it off. That's number one advice on the applications. And then thirdly, have the right apps that will actually help protect your phone altogether. And of course, have antivirus applications, have NordVPN application that goes beyond just providing you with virtual private network. It adds layer of security. If something fishy is happening on your phone or you're trying to click on the link, those applications will stop that action from taking place and will protect your device on your behalf.
그러면은 VPN을 쓰면은 이미 해킹된 디바이스들한테도 효과가 있는 건가요?
It is effective to use it after the attack and before the attack. So on NordVPN, we have Threat Protection Pro features that will help help your device to be protected from attacks. And then if it happens after the attack also, it will help pinpoint if something is happening in the background. If you click on the links, and it will help those to be. But ultimately, if you already had something where you clicked onto something and you can tell something is wrong, well, the biggest thing is obviously using the right tools, but also maybe servicing your phone and making sure that things get deleted from there.
Sooner the better.
The sooner, the better.
그러니까 이게 참 재미있는 게 그런 경우가 있었대요. 탈퇴를 한 지 5년도 넘었는데 그때 가입을 했던 정보들 때문에 해킹을 당한 경우도 있다. 그러니까 앱을 다 지우고 탈퇴도 하고 했는데 왜 아직까지 내 정보가 그곳에 있는 건지 이거 약간 궁금합니다.
I think that's where the false belief exists that when we log out, when we delete our account somewhere, we delete the app, we just automatically assume that the data was ours and we deleted it. Unfortunately, that data now belongs to the company that owns the app. And there's going to be data retention policies. Often enough, it's going to be for legal reasons also, where they'll have certain amount of time that they'll have to keep that data. And you can imagine if you used an app somewhere and data retention policy is going to be 5 years, that means for the next 5 years, they'll have that data available. If something happens, if that company gets breached and the data gets stolen, unfortunately, your data will be there also.
Can you take any legal actions about that or no? Because basically you kind of agreed to it. It's kind of on you, right?
Yeah, you agree to it, but then also depends on governmental guidance as well, depending on the country, what the data retention policies are. Because often enough, that is for your protection as well. The data exists there, so you can access it and so on. But then what it is, ultimately, if you use the right tools, those tools will be able to tell you if a breach happens. So for instance, with NordVPN, we have the dark web monitoring, like I mentioned. And if you had your password, your details in there, and suddenly you used an app somewhere and that app information gets breached by hackers and then they take that data. And we saw last year as well quite a few big breaches that happened in South Korea.
작년에 이제 한국에서 일어난 개인정보 유출 사건에 대해서 말씀을 주셨는데 한국은 사실 세계적으로 유명한 IT 강국이잖아요. 근데 왜 이렇게 정보가 자주 털리는 걸까요?
I do. I think there's a slight misunderstanding where people assume that the country is very progressive in the technology world. And of course, South Korea is one of the fastest growing markets when it comes to technology and innovation. I think what it does also, it leaves that growth vulnerability where it's growing so fast that cybersecurity aspects and security aspects can't keep up with the growth spurt. And then also what it does, it puts a target on its back in terms of what countries' hackers target necessarily. And we've seen these tendencies everywhere. And we obviously every year we see a lot of American companies being targeted, for instance, or European companies being targeted. It's not that South Korean companies or data is less protected than elsewhere.
한국인의 개인정보 가격은 한 얼마인가요?
On the dark web, you can buy anything you want to. And I joke about it how personal information of South Korean citizens is cheaper than McDonald's meal. I think on average, it's about $7 full personal information of a person.
That's way too cheap.
And unfortunately, you can find everything. You can find passports, you can find visas, everything.
작년에 이제 개인정보 유출 사고가 있었을 때 그런 식의 농담이 좀 있었어요. 저기 지구 어디엔가 나와 똑같은 이름과 여권 번호를 가지고 있는 누군가가 살고 있을 것이다.
It is what we do about it. That's what matters. And I think that's where often enough we as human beings, we're creatures of habit, I always say. And for simplicity reasons, we sadly reuse passwords, right? And if you reuse passwords, right, someone having your old password from somewhere, and by the way, we saw breaches like that happen also, they do brute force attacks where they take a database that has, let's say, 100,000 different passwords, including, let's say, yours and mine. They go to Instagram and take the same password and try to log in to all the accounts on Instagram using those passwords. Let's say your email and the same password has been breached because you used the same password. And that's where it comes in different, let's say, password management solutions as well, like NordPass. You don't need to remember the password, and the password is always going to be unique and different. So if one password has been breached somewhere, at least all your other accounts are protected.
노드 VPN하고 노드 패스에 대해서 말씀을 해주셨는데 이게 같은 건가요? 아니면 다른 건가요?
Those are two different products. One is VPN, Virtual Private Network, that protects how you browse the internet, what you do, protects your device as antivirus would. And the other one is a password manager.
They cost money, right?
It is a paid service, but let me tell you why it's good to have a paid service. We've seen this a lot as well, where users often enough, they choose to go free VPN service for one reason or another. Always say we get nothing for free. If the service because it's free, you are the product. So firstly, VPN, what it does, it has a capability, right, if done wrong by the organization, by the company behind it, to collect what you do, collect your logs. So everything it protects you from, they can collect the information. So ultimately, at NordVPN, we don't collect any logs. We provide complete privacy and safety to our users. Cheaper is not always the best.
그러니까 이미 정보가 유출이 됐으니까 손 놓고 있는 게 아니라 어떤 액션을 취하는지가 중요한 것 같은데 일단은 그 시작점에 항상 비밀번호가 있는 것 같아요.
It is, but I think that's where it still comes in, making sure that we create safe passwords. Hackers now, they can automate and guess the password. So imagine they're trying to log in. They know your name, but they don't know your password. Maybe they know your surname. Maybe they know where you live. And what they'll do, they'll try to guess a password combination that could be from your name and maybe date of birth. Believe it or not, for hackers to guess your password, if it's something very simple related to you, it could take less than 1 second using AI algorithms.
1초도 안 걸린다고요? 그러면은 소문자, 대문자, 특수문자 다 조합하는 게 도움이 어느 정도 되는 건가요?
It can, but interestingly, contrary to common belief, we saw American NIST, so National Institute of Standards and Technology, come out with guidance for passwords, and they are gold standard in terms of explaining what passwords should be. And we often believe that passwords need to be uppercase, lowercase, special digits, characters, and so on. But what they outline, that the most important aspect is the length of password.
길이?
Yes. So it needs to be at least 15, 16 digits in length. So you can imagine when algorithm is trying to guess a password with each digit adds millions and millions of variations of password. So ultimately it gets to the point where if you're putting 16, let's say, digits into your password, unless the password is going to be your name and your surname, and that comes up to 16 digits, well, that's too weak. If it's going to be 16 digits, maybe something even could be random words, right? That would be almost impossible for AI automated algorithm to guess. Donut, house, sky, water, I don't know. Something unrelated, but that could be stronger than a password that could include digits and numbers and so on.
저는 약간 설득을 당했어요. 내 개인정보를 내가 굉장히 적극적으로 지켜야겠다. 자, 여기서부터 이제 어떻게에 대한 이야기를 좀 해보려고 합니다. 이제 VPN 이야기를 말씀을 많이 하셨어요. 일반적인 사용자에게도 VPN이 꼭 필요할까요?
Of course, I might sound biased, right? Coming from NordVPN. However, even before myself working at NordVPN, I always used VPNs. I say the less technical you are, the more casual you are, the more important it is. The reason being is that if you're more technical, you're probably a little bit more aware of security measures, like maybe turning on two-factor authentication, or at least like you're more skeptical the links you click on and so on. But let's say our parents or my parents, right? They are less skeptical, right? They're more likely to click on the link that could be malicious, that could be targeting them and so on. So I'd say the less technical, the more casual you are, the more important it is. Because NordVPN, it's not just about VPN that masks your IP address and then you can log in from Korea, you can log into American IP address. No, you can use Korean IP address to stay local, but it has many other features that would protect your device.
혹시 좀 보여주실 수 있을까요?
Yeah, absolutely. So
VPN을 키는 방법?
So actually, I have it on already.
Okay.
And also, like I said as well, contrary to popular belief, we don't need to connect to VPN that would be outside of where you are. So when I connect to VPN, it's always going to be a local country, right? So for me, it's going to be a local network, local country. And you can choose the country. So for me, you can see Seoul and US, Chicago is the second most popular one now. But then again, that's where other features come into play as well that you turn on. So because those features are one of the most important ones when it comes in to always be protected. Then you could actually set blockings available there as well. You can see here as well, threat protection is on. That's where dark web monitoring comes in. But that's how simple it is. It's just one click away. You can type in, if you want to, the location where you want it to be, or you can just click secure my network and it'll connect to the closest location possible, which of course it's Seoul. That doesn't really slow down.
왜냐면 많은 분들이 VPN 쓰면 인터넷이 느려진다라고 생각을 하시는데 그건 아닌 거죠?
It doesn't, because what it is, it's common sense. Meaning, if you try to connect to the US server, then of course it will slow down because of how far it needs to travel, right? But one thing I'll say, congratulations to Seoul, of course, to Korea, because you have the fastest internet in the world. So the amount of slowdown you guys get will probably probably still be faster than most of the internet elsewhere in the world, especially in the US. So it is very, very marginal. But if you connect to local servers, let's say Seoul, you wouldn't be able to feel anything. I mean, I'm talking from my own experience rather than, what NordVPN does, but I don't feel it at all. You turn it on and you forget about it. If I travel somewhere, I just make sure that I reconnect to the closest server where I am if I need to.
그렇다면 왜 광고 있잖아요. 내가 다른 사이트에서 검색을 한 광고인데 유튜브나 SNS를 켰는데 그 똑같은 광고가 계속 뜨고 이런 광고도 VPN으로 해소가 가능한 걸까요?
So VPN can help with that. And that is one of the ways that your internet provider actually tracks your information and then sells it and uses it for advertising purposes. And also VPN can block that for you.
자, 일단 개인정보가 이미 유출됐다고 해서 손 놓고 있으면 절대 안 될 것 같고요. 자, 노드 VPN에서 지식인사이드 시청자분들만을 위한 특별 혜택을 준비했다고 합니다. 자, 더보기 및 고정 댓글의 링크를 통해서 구매하시거나 쿠폰 코드 지식을 입력하시면은 2년 플랜 결제 시 4개월 추가 혜택을 받으실 수 있습니다. 자, 장기요금제가 훨씬 저렴하다고 해요. 최대 75% 할인이 적용된다고 하니까 관심 있으신 분들은 한번 이용을 해보시길 바랍니다. 또한 30일 내 환불 보장이 가능해서 부담 없이 체험해 보실 수 있습니다. 네, 일단 저부터 좀 해야 될 것 같아요. 너무 무섭습니다. 자, 마지막으로 업계에 숨겨진 비밀 지식 한 가지만 구독자분들에게 공개를 해주시길 부탁드리도록 하겠습니다.
I would say it's cookies. I know I've mentioned it. We talked about it today.
So
but
we should enable all the cookies because we're lazy? Because I click on accept all the time.
So accepting cookies is fine, right? Obviously, we should be more cautious of. And then if you log into on your laptop, on your phone from public Wi-Fi, don't log into your bank account. Don't do really private stuff there or on your phone, on your laptop from the network that you don't fully trust. If it's public, don't trust it fully. If you log it in from public Wi-Fi, for instance, that could be one way to really take your sessions, right? If it's unsecure. So firstly, make sure you secure that session where, let's say, using NordVPN. So it goes out to everything we do. We need to be very skeptical online, unfortunately.
자, 이런 세상에서 정말 개인정보를 보호하는 게 너무나도 중요하다는 생각이 듭니다. 오늘 시간 내주셔서 감사합니다. 자, 저희는 다음에도 더 재미있고 유익한 주제로 돌아오겠습니다. 감사합니다. Can you say 감사합니다?
감사합니다.
That's good. 감사합니다.